please raise your hand if you want to share. There was so much. I wrote so many notes down. I love this star virtue. I love that it is compassion. And I love that, you know, that you use this poetry of the constellations to help us to see our connection with all things, and that you started out with our connection with all things. And it just gave me so much to savor. I love that section where you talked about the Mother Teresa experiment, and that seeing acts of kindness strengthens us. I can't, you know, of course I believe that, but it's like, I you know, I just feel like we need to have more, or it would be very helpful to have more opportunities to celebrate kindness than just Sunday morning. Do you know what I mean? And so, like, encouraging yourself, you know, to really, I know Todd has been talking about kindness forever. His whole podcast is based on the kind mind. If you have a question or something you want to share with him, raise your hand. But for me, I don't think I've always really, just like you were saying, I don't think I've always thought about kindness as the brightest aspect of my being. And but recently, because of the focus that we're putting on kindness, I have encourage myself to be more kind, not just towards myself, but towards others, and do those miscellaneous kind acts. And it's so surprising how, you know, how lovely, how much more lovely it can be when you just do a little bit extra, or you wait a little bit longer, or you make the call, or you find a bit more patience where you didn't think you had any. You have a bit more generosity where you didn't think you had. And I'm so glad that we're going to be able to spend the whole year with you focusing on kindness.
Me too. Thank you. I'm really excited about that and all of the places we can go together.
You also have the tendency to give us new words like contrapositive. I'll be looking that $3 word up. But in the meantime, we have Colm here. Hi, Colm.
Hey, Maureen. Hey, Todd. Hi, everybody. Good to be here. Todd, that was great. Very thought-provoking. And so I was scribbling some notes. And it's evening time here, so we're a few hours ahead of you guys. And I spent the afternoon, I was sort of scrolling on Instagram. I you know, scroll reels and whatnot. And I came across one. The Dalai Lama was talking to a group of young people. And the question that was asked was, some younger person was talking about, well, how do I be less anxious? And his response was, the antidote to anxiety and self-centered attitude is in fact altruism. It is in fact focusing outwards. And it came to me when you were talking about that story where you were feeling miserable carrying those bricks, and I was feeling for you. And a very difficult shift to make, but you made it. And effectively, you flicked the switch and you said, okay, I'm here for a different reason. And you made peace with the work and got on with it. And I just think it's very easy for us to be miserable and, you know, feeling woe is me and my life is in the toilet if we focus on ourselves only. It's when we look around and see people significantly in today's world, significantly far worse off than we are. But we don't even have to look to other countries. I think we just need to look in our own community and see there are people in pain. And I just wanted to share that, to throw it into the conversation, see where it leads, if that's okay. But thank you, Todd.
Absolutely. Thank you, Colm. That was really beautiful and profound. And so, I mean, anxiety is a fear, right? Just building off of what you were sharing. And that fear tells us that there are parts where that there's separation where there's unity. I think that's the real confounding aspect of anxiety. You know, it tells us that there's not interdependence, for instance. And so we operate out of fear, and it becomes an anchor in our life. But kindness generates a different energy, and it reveals, you know, something deeper, something more fundamental. I would just like to offer this to everybody as like a practice of kindness this year. When you were saying, you got it in India, you had that awareness. You undoubtedly will need to make changes. Like you may need to change jobs. You may need to change something about a relationship. You may need to move. There will be difficult changes here and there that people have to make. But when there's stress around it, try telling yourself, I need to make this change to be kind to myself, not so that I can be happy, and see what shifts about that, or what changes within you, because that may give you access to so many more moments of inspiration, tranquility, love, peace while you're making the change. There's something that really leads us astray when we believe I have to make this change, otherwise I can't be happy, because I think that becomes more part of the delusion that Colm is talking about, and it brings us more and more into isolation and separation and comparison, because this person has this and they have the happiness I don't have, and it can just really take us on a downward spiral. So thank you.
Thank you, Colm. And Carly, what do you have to share?
Thank you for your question, Colm and Todd. Yes, that was so beautiful. And I noticed that you were so miserable in India, and then there was a fellow who was happy. So it was like you wanted to take a look at that variable. I love that word. And I guess my question is, when I find myself in those situations in life, do you need to vent for a minute of, I do like the air conditioning, it is hot, or did it just, I mean, because I guess it's worked both ways for me, that there are some times when I need to get in touch with those feelings and befriend them, and then it does change. Or sometimes just by seeing the other person, it can just pop, and I don't even need to, I don't even need to, those negative emotions just seem to disappear or evaporate.
Thank you, Carly. Well, I think those ideas are coming from our biological drives. And so I think there's something happening within our biocognitive system that's simply doing its job. Somewhere within us, there should be the suggestion, should we get to somewhere warmer? Should we go somewhere cooler? Should we go look for food now? And with enough self-awareness, it goes back into perspective, so you make a good point that I think it's always good to validate ourselves. I think that could be like a way of thinking of this, the venting piece, like validate. And we can do this externally as well. I can validate that situation is not fair. That's not right. Or what that person is doing to someone else is not legal or not moral or whatever. And then, that can motivate me to try to make changes. It's just that we sometimes conflate justice, success, health, even. We cannot go from point A to point B in this journey of life and be healthy the whole way. Otherwise, we wouldn't die, So, I mean, in some scientific definitions, death is considered as a disease, or aging is considered a disease, depending on the definition. So we can't, no one's getting out of this world alive with their body. But then if that were true, then that would also mean we can't be happy, because we have to have loss, we have to die. So I'm trying to, make this, I'll give you another word, Maureen, bifurcation between our biological drives and the needs of our body and of the community, and something true about us spiritually. Yeah, thank you.
When you were talking about those three, thank you, Carly. It's really beautiful. And I love that question. Like, is there room for me to vent in the transition towards my kindness? It's such a kind question, really, isn't it? You know, to say like, and you're basically saying, will I do this perfectly? No, I will not do this perfectly, because you were human. But in the assessment of what kindness is, you said three things. You said friendly, considerate, and generous.
Mhm.
And those could almost be the three steps into the transition of saying like, this is hot as hell, but it's also my friend. So how do I make friends with this is hot as hell? Okay, so that's a step away from my complaining about it, but just like, I'm going to begin to be friendly with it. And then I'm going to consider it. I'm going to be considerate around it. Like, why does hot have to be so bad? I mean, it's just really hot. It's a stimulation that feels really bad. And then generous, like, what can I do to add to the pleasantness of this as opposed to fight it? Like, how can I create like that man who was just whistling? Like, how can I contribute as opposed to condemn? And so I just find those three attributes of kindness are they could be action steps. Anyway.
That's beautiful. And yeah, I agree that's, I think that's a powerful kind of step-by-step breaking it down. It's also, I know Mia, Sarah, and others do some of the cold plunges. I like to do that sometimes too. But on the surface, it's not, you know, initially it wouldn't be comfortable, but you can ultimately do it because you know it's kind to your body.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to meet the uncomfortable. You have to make peace, or you have to make friendship with the cold. You consider the bigger picture. This is good for lowering inflammation and all of that. And you're considering the bigger picture. You're not just considering the time that you might be uncomfortable initially.
Yeah.
And that can actually reveal that this is a powerful practice, that kind of experience, because once you feel like you achieve an equilibrium in your mind, it's something that can stay with you, not just when you're like in cold water, but when you're in a tense moment in a conversation or in a relationship or in a conflict at work. It's also like being in the ice, where you can still take into account what's truly kind to yourself. With work, with success, with earning, or going back to school, you can keep reminding yourself, this might be hard, or this might be uncomfortable, but I'm doing it to be kind to myself. So we include ourselves in that kindness.
Yeah. And the consideration step feels like it's opening my mind. And the prior to that, when I'm just thinking this is hot and I don't like it, the consideration makes me walk around the elephant a little bit and look at what are other possible experiences and possible benefits from this classroom that I'm in right now. So yeah, totally applicable to every situation, even being in cold water. John, did you want to share?
Yeah. First of all, I don't like the cold. I'm sorry. I'm not into cold
Me
plunges.
neither.
Yeah, but I understand that you can't get comfortable by breathing and stuff. But one of the things Cole said about the Dalai Lama reminded me, back in 2008, the Dalai Lama came to Seattle and had this thing at the stadium called Seeds of Compassion. And I got this shirt that says, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible." And I love that, you know, because we can always be kind. And the other thing I wanted to mention too is, in the Course in Miracles, the characteristics of a teacher of God, it seems like even though kindness isn't listed as one of them, I think kindness is involved in every one of them. You know, there's trust, honesty, tolerance, gentleness, joy, defenselessness, generosity, patience, faithfulness, and open-mindedness. And I think all of those, you have to be kind to accept those things into your heart and into your soul so that you can give it back. So I just wanted to make that little comment. Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Just threading through a little Course in Miracles, in chapter 15, it talks about like when we're done with these classrooms, that it says all of your kindness has been held for you and washed clean. And so it's interesting to think that what's being held for us? Our kindness. Our kindness is being held for us. That's how important it is that, like, and it says like everything else that you ever did is washed away, just your kindness and your love. But it specifically uses the word kindness. So I appreciate that. And I'll pass it to you, Mia and Eileen.
Hi, thank you, Todd. Yeah, I just wanted to speak to what you were sharing about the whole idea when you go to make a change in your life, and recognizing that if the impetus is there to make that change, to remind yourself that you're doing it to be kind. And I know as an addiction counselor, you'll appreciate this. And for me, it was just the perfect thing to hear today, because, and Maureen, you've spoken about this before as well. I was sitting with Spirit this morning and asking about some changes that I need to make. And one of them was, you know, maybe stay away from coffee shops. And the addiction, interestingly, is not to coffee. It's to seemingly being kind to myself. You know, seemingly giving to myself. And I sat with my accountant the other day, you know, and I realized if I hadn't went to coffee shops all of last year, there'd be money in my account now that isn't there, you know. And when I sat with this idea of not going to coffee shops, you know, and I'm not saying never, but certainly not so often, the fear that rose in me was as great as, you know, many, many years ago when I decided to give up alcohol. Like terror inside in me. And, you know, that reminder that this is something I'm doing and can do moment to moment. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, looking at the whole year ahead, because of course the whole year ahead is like, fuck, no coffee shops. But, you know, tomorrow no coffee shops, or today no coffee shops, is bearable. You know, is okay. And that reminder that this is a kindness, this is a gentleness, this is love, you know, towards myself. So I'm really appreciative of that reminder today of that, you know, and that we make those choices out of kindness. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's beautiful, and wishing you all the best with any transition that honors what's deeper or more authentic for you or healthier.
Yeah, thank you.
But yeah, with anything, it is one day at a time. And the pressure of knowing that we're going to do something or not going to do something for the rest of our life can be overwhelming.
I love that a kind act can start out kind, and then it can no longer be kind. You know what I mean? Like, it's sometimes kind to take myself out to coffee, but imbalance. And then all of a sudden, this one place where I find kindness is like, that is now unkind. And so to be awake and around what is really the purpose here, you know,
Yeah.
and to find other ways of being kind, like, yeah, it's just very, I love that. Thank you for sharing that, Mia.
Also, when you remove something, this is especially true for like addiction recovery, when you take something out of life, or a bond, because I think it's good to be honest about, like you were saying, it's not just coffee. There's a whole experience going to a coffee. I love it. You know, it's not just, and I think it's even more so in other parts of the world than Starbucks in America. But when you go to like a local coffee shop, there's a whole vibe, right? So yeah, to pretend that like that isn't enriching or nourishing, you know, wouldn't be true. So when you take something out, and the same can be true for even something like smoking, when someone's trying to quit, their experience with smoking wasn't just the nicotine and tobacco. It's that there was like 5 of us on the smoke break, you know, every day. And it wasn't just smoking, it was like seeing each other. And so there's a lot more that goes into any transition. But I think it's important not just to take something away, but to think of why we create some space, because there's somewhere else that we want to invest that energy or that time or that money.
Yes. Thank you for that. Thank you. Clive's up, and then Joni, and then we'll get Justine up. Hey, Clive. Are you speaking, Clive? If so, just speak up a little bit louder.
Can't hear.
Nope.
Nope. Unplug that microphone.
No. And go sit by Mia.
Come in next door.
Go next door.
Join the
By me.
party.
Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Yes.
we can. Yeah, we can.
You can now. Okay, sorry. Sorry, I had my thing. It just came to me that for me, I think kindness is like a question. It's when I think of what, and it comes to mind of like, what's the kind thing here? It makes me look at, like the other things, like makes me consider, what's the generous thing to do? It asks me, when I think of the kindness in this situation, it asks so many other questions. It says, what are you doing in this situation? And I think kindness is almost like a question of all those other actions or possibilities.
Thank you, Clive. I love that. Reminds me of a little aphorism, I think, attributed to Socrates, that question before you do something or say something, those three gates of, is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? That certainly could apply to ourselves as well, I would imagine. Is this thing I'm thinking about my life or my work, is that really true? And is it necessary? And is it kind, or is it kind for me to do this act or make this change? I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Good to see you.
And you.
Joni, did you want to share?
Yeah, I just real quick, Todd, the part with being cold. I remember when I took CPR, and I did it because it was required, but I also thought I was learning something kind to be helpful. So I think the question is, when I got cold was when I came upon an accident and I was the first one there. It was Thanksgiving, it was raining, it was very cold, it was dark. And, I was questioning in my mind between I want to be of service, to be kind. And then when the police came, I thought they would relieve me. And they said, no, we'll keep you safe, but you have to wait and help him until until the rescue people arrive. It was the kindness that golden rule of treat someone the way you would want to be treated is what got me past the very physically uncomfortable. I think the first thing, I've said this before, I told my sister, when you have to be doing service, that where's the coffee, where's the air conditioning, it wasn't that. And it was through the golden rule or being kind that allowed me to push through that very uncomfortable evening. So I just wondered if, it doesn't have to be one thing. It can be a mixture of it, and, not always feeling, be kind to myself if I could get in the car and be warm, but it was moment by moment wrestling with that in order to, but ultimately what held me there was my desire to be of service, which I think for me at the time was as close as I could get to being kind. So just wondered what you thought about that.
Well, I think it's amazing what you did. And if anyone's ever in a situation like that, it's so daunting and scary, like the pressure also to respond and be almost instinctive. So, thank you for being so kind in that moment. But I think it really speaks to the third one, Joni, of consider, friendly, generous. I mean, you couldn't have been any more generous in that moment. But the consideration there was, yeah, it's cold and I could be more comfortable, but from a broader view, I can see what the kindest thing to do is, or what I need to do. And that's what's so beautiful about consider being, meaning with the stars, because it's like, take the biggest view necessary if you're not sure, you know,
Yeah. Yeah.
put as much in perspective as you can.
I shared a story last week about Billy who dragged me out of the house in the middle of a blizzard to help this dude get out of this. And I was like, it was so, but in the, and I was like, it's cold. Even this drunk guy doesn't want to be out here with us. This is, but to consider that this is temporary. We're going to be cold for a little while. And so that I think the consideration can actually help us to see that we actually have way more resources than than the ego is willing to let us see. Do you know that it's very temporary, and that the consideration of the physicality is the same as when Mia gets into the cold water. Like, it's temporary. You're going to feel a little uncomfortable. I think sometimes we are so shored up against being uncomfortable that we lose opportunities for growth. Anyway, that's my little med rant, and I'll pass it to you, Justine.
Good morning, everyone from Los Angeles. It's so good to be here. I was moved to raise my hand just now when Mia was sharing about coffee shops, and I was thinking prior to her sharing that, her very giving service of cacao making and how she does this cacao making. And, you know, I was lucky enough to be with her in Ireland, and she did it every single day. And I took the plunge like once or twice, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it the way I couldn't stay in the water, you know, as long. And Clive said that was okay for me to do that. But that whole feeling of being uncomfortable, and this, I just love this. I will look at stars differently and think about this word considerate. I went on a retreat in Mount Shasta, which is apparently the chakra of the world, the root chakra of the world. And I really had never looked at stars, and I couldn't sleep a couple nights, and there were hammocks around, and I would just go and just stare at the stars. I never, you know, I took time there to do things like that. And I'm going to look at that differently now. And I had read the 4 agreements while I was there too. And I think the first chapter, he talks about the space between the light and just the magic there. But I think what really stuck with me, Todd, is this idea of kindness and acts of service, and how and it was not something that was bred into my upbringing. In fact, I would shy away when it came time to volunteer for things. I'm so scared to volunteer for things. I mean, I'm recognizing that now because I volunteer for things and I do service, and it gets you focused. And that giving and receiving, but not doing it for happiness. Like, that was a very interesting thing that you said for me, you know, like, I'm not doing this because I will be happy by doing it. So just thank you for recognizing. I don't know if there's a question in there, but just thank you for all of that recognition.
Thank you for sharing. I do want to pull on one of those threads a little more, because everything you said was really beautiful. And it reminded me that, you know, sometimes depending on our upbringing, our family experience, our cultural experience, or education, it can really feel like something like volunteering or spending more time in service really holds you back from your potential, especially in the context of productivity or capitalism or something like that, you know. But I think from a spiritual standpoint that this actually disconnects us from abundance, because it's sort of like telling the universe or God that I see abundance as money or time, but maybe the higher power knows that the earth is abundant, and there's all types of abundances. There's abundant health, there's abundant finances, there's abundant friendship, there's abundant love. And when we show up or become a conduit for that without defining what the abundance is, it's manifest also in the attitude that I can give because I'm not afraid of missing out. So it's a demonstration spiritually, a spiritual demonstration of trust. I can give what I have, not hold on to it because I trust that more is coming and more will come when that pipeline is established also. Then the higher power knows we have to keep supplying.
That's great. So we have Donna and then we have John. It's interesting, that point that you just made about how it's connected to our prosperity. I'm sure that's going to ring a few bells for people. Yeah, and I wholeheartedly agree. So Donna, did you want to share?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite subjects, kindness. I suppose really early when I was studying A Course in Miracles, I realized that the only way I was going to get through it was by being very kind to myself. You know, chaos could come up and it could be a block that was being removed. And I found that I needed to bring in this gentleness and real kindness to myself. And as the years go by, I have noticed that every year I go at a deeper level with this. It's like the level changes. And I find that by being very gentle with myself, it spills out then to other people. Like if I wasn't so gentle and kind and loving and understanding to myself, then I wouldn't be able to give it out. Now, you probably said all this, Todd, because I was late coming into your talk, and I'm sorry about that, but I loved what you were saying. And yeah, so I'm just wondering, is there levels with this? Like, do you know, the more you practice it, the deeper you go?
Thank you, Donna. It's just a beautiful reflection. I think you're right on that it ought to be something that flows outward. I mean, if we think the priority is to be kinder farther from the center of our being, well, then it becomes like the analogy of the oxygen masks on the plane. If I just go around starting to help people fit their oxygen masks on and then I quickly run out of air, then there's a cap on how kind I can be. But if I include myself or even prioritize compassion for, basically, it's sort of like the body is the immediate environment. And as environmentalists, also, I would talk about this sometimes in environmental circles, that we have a responsibility to take care of our health. We have a responsibility to our car and our rooms that we live in, because if you're trying to make a difference in the community or in the environment, but your personal environment is out of flow or imbalanced, we could safely assume that if I was responsible then for the environment, it was all up to me, it would look like my environment. So it does need to be, I think, an outward flow. And when we're giving ourselves permission to be really kind to ourselves, that's not the same as selfish. It will tell you like something is selfish, like how Clive said, it's a question also. And when it's flowing outward, then I think we become an instrument of peace, and we move like a shrine of peace. It's like a mobile temple, and people can come into that ambience and find sanctuary in the kindness of our aura. So yeah, I would invite everybody to try to think about it that way, that it's okay to give yourself permission to be truly kind to yourself every day and let it radiate further from there.
Thank you so much for all the questions and conversations. We have one question left, and then we'll hear from Eileen Bray again.
It's just not a question. I just wanted to share a little way you can spread kindness to each other. And there's this organization called youmatter.com, and you can get these little cards, business cards, and I pass these out all the time to people. They'll send you 30 of them for free, but I ordered 1,000 of them for $20, and I pass them out everywhere I go. Most of the cashiers and stuff, and sometimes it's like people just react like, "Oh my God, you just made my day," you know. But just telling somebody you matter because everybody matters, and that's part of kindness. So I just wanted to share that. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And some of the highlights from today, yeah, Todd saying, I mean, the thousands of things that you shared, but to say, I need to make this change in order to be kind to myself. Great takeaway, great applicable way to practice it. John Ruiz giving us the example of, it's possible to be kind, and it's always possible to be kind. There's some form of kindness that could happen right here and right now. Colin gave us the suggestion of, like, you don't have to go to India. Like, your neighborhood will give you extravagant opportunities for extending kindness. And I think it was Donna that really hit it home of, like, you can't give what you don't have. So you have to, and loved what you said about that personal environment of your body. You do have to be kind to yourself so that you can be kind to others. So there's so much for us to take away here. So grateful for you, Todd, and for all of the conversation. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave us with before we bring our magical musician back up, Eileen Bray?
No, thank you so much, Maureen. It's been a pleasure today. Thank you, everybody, for the wonderful conversation and for lots more ideas for me to reflect on, and the collective wisdom of the group is powerful. If you want to learn more about this topic or some of the similar things people brought up with change, with transitions, there's a few episodes on those subjects in my podcast, Kind Mind.
Yeah, go on over there, subscribe, like, share Kind Mind podcast. And I know it's so interesting, like, when the idea for a year focusing on the brilliance of kindness, I really was thinking we'll run out of topics pretty fast. It turns out that I think it's going to be a really deep and wonderful year for all of us. So with that, I'll pass it back to Mia and Eileen.
Well, just Eileen, really.
I wanted to say just something just on the last little piece there about kindness to oneself. If I may just I had an Akashic reading a couple of years ago, and it was taught, I think there's a link from kindness to oneself to receiving, and so many of us find it so difficult to receive. And the message that came through from Spirit was to choose ease over struggle when dealing with oneself. So that can be as simple as if you had a to-do list, maybe even just taking one thing off your to-do list so that you are being kinder to yourself, or, just receiving a compliment, like something just so simple as that. You're sending out that beautiful message about kindness to oneself. So yeah, so we can be kinder, we can give more to others. Todd, I can't believe you said in there, you said that we can be instruments of peace. So this always happens with SpeakEasy. This final musical prayer that I'd like to offer is one of my favorites, which is the prayer of Francis of Assisi. And this is one of the first pieces I put to music maybe 3 years ago. And it's I think it's just one of the most beautiful prayers. And woven in with it is a beautiful mantra in Sanskrit, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which some of you may be familiar with. May all beings everywhere be happy and free. So please do sing with me, chant with me. And this has been so beautiful. Thank you so much, Todd. Thank you to everybody. This has been a real gift today. Thank you. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. And where there's doubt, let me so fade. Where there's despair, let me so hold. And where there's darkness, let there be light. And where there's sadness, let there be joy. O divine Master, grant that I may be not consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that we receive, and it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it's in dying that we are born to eternal life, and it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. And it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. Loka samasa Sukino Bhavantu Loka Samasta 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 Sukino Bhavantu. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me so love, and where there's injury, pardon, and where there's doubt, faith, and where there's war, peace, where there's division, unity, and where there are differences, tolerance, and where there's anger, calm, where there's depression, hope, and where there's fear, there's dis-ease, wellness. And where there's tyranny, freedom. And where there's war, peace. And where there's war, peace. And where there's war, peace. Lord, make us instruments of your peace.
Thank you so much, Eileen and Todd and the community. Thank you so much, everyone. Now go out there and be kind to yourself and each other. It's beautiful. What a great combination. What a great collaboration. I'll be watching this one myself just because there were so many gems. And we'll see you next week.